Now in, two top former Bandidos, National President Jeffrey Pike and ex-Vice President John Xavier Portillo, found guilty in a 13-count indictment.
In 2018, after a 3-month jury trial, Jeffrey Pike and John Portillo, who were defendants' appellants, were found guilty of various charges connected to a RICO conspiracy. Their convictions stem from their roles as top officials in the Bandidos Outlaws Motorcycle Club, a 1% biker group with strong ties in Texas. The Bandidos Outlaws Motorcycle Club, often referred to as the Bandidos, is a global motorcycle club consisting of around 1,100 members worldwide. The Bandidos motorcycle gang has a saying, "Cut one, we all bleed." Members of the club proudly identify themselves as a 1% motorcycle club, signifying their dedication to loyalty, brotherhood, and commitment. The 1% label allows the Bandidos to portray themselves as outlaws. During the trial, Johnny Romo, a Bandidos member, explained that being part of the 1% means they consider themselves superior to other clubs. Although other 1% motorcycle clubs in the United States exist, the Bandidos view themselves as the most influential. The club is involved in drug distribution and violent crime, and they use various symbols to distinguish its members and communicate with outsiders. Members wear a 3-piece patch featuring an emblem of a character, known as the Fat Mexican, holding a pistol and machete. The bottom rocker section of the patch indicates the territory claimed by each member, such as Texas for those belonging to chapters in the state. The Bandidos protect the integrity of the bottom rocker, reserving the full 3-piece patch for official members only. Prospects can join support clubs as a pathway to becoming full members, a process known as being patched in. The Bandidos have a strong presence in Texas, where the club was established in March 1966 in San Leon. At the time of the trial, there were 35 to 40 Bandidos chapters in Texas, comprising approximately 400 members statewide, making it the primary 1% motorcycle club in the state. The club operates under a structured management hierarchy, with national officers organizing events like annual runs. Local chapters maintain substantial autonomy, but contribute dues to the national office for event expenses. The national leadership includes positions such as president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and sergeants at arms, overseeing patch distribution and recognizing members' contributions. From 2005 to 2016, Jeffrey Pike held the position of national president for the Bandidos, taking over after the former president George Wiegers pleaded guilty to a RICO conspiracy. In the Bandidos structure, the president, also known as El Presidente, is granted full authority to make daily decisions, which some members liken to a dictatorship. Pike, however, countered this perception, asserting that individual chapters operate independently. He claimed that he aimed to steer the group towards being more mainstream and family-centric during his presidency, a departure from Wiegers' leadership style. In 2002, John Portillo was elevated from the San Antonio Bandidos chapter's local president to the national sergeant at arms role, tasked with safeguarding national officers and managing ties with different chapters and rival clubs. Pike appointed Portillo as the national vice president, or El Vice Presidente, in 2013. The vice president's primary purpose is to shield the president from direct involvement in certain matters. A recorded conversation revealed Portillo's commitment to protecting Pike. Portillo explained that he thought of himself as, quote, Jeff's guy, unquote. He said, quote, "I'm here to protect Pike. I'm gonna protect him from the fucking bullshit that's going on," unquote. Another wiretap discussion exposed Portillo's practice of consulting Pike before making significant decisions. Portillo was recorded explaining that he, quote, "don't make no majors without Pike knowing about it," unquote. In 2001, Jay Negrete, a member of the San Antonio Bandidos chapter, was tragically killed in a shooting incident. Portillo, who was serving as president of Negrete's local chapter at the time, received information from Magenta Winans identifying Robert Lara as responsible for the crime. Portillo then instructed a group of Bandidos members, including Richard Merla, to, quote, "take care of Lara." Merla and his fellow Bandidos members led Lara to a park under false pretenses, awaiting the order to kill Lara from Portillo. Upon receiving the order, they fatally shot Lara multiple times and promptly left the scene without checking on his condition. Subsequently, they regrouped at Portillo's brother's residence, who belonged to a Bandidos support club. Lara's lifeless body was later discovered by law enforcement. Following the incident, Portillo cautioned Merla not to discuss Lara's murder. Merla handed over the weapon used in the shooting to Portillo, who destroyed it using a torch. As a token of recognition, Merla and the other Bandidos involved were bestowed with Expect No Mercy patches, a symbol reserved for members who demonstrated unwavering loyalty by, quote, drawing blood or shedding blood for the club. 2 years after the murder of Robert Lara, as retaliation for killing a Bandidos member, Richard Merla was apprehended for another killing. While incarcerated, Merla admitted to the 2002 killing of Lara and accused Portillo of being involved in the crime. During trial, Portillo's defense lawyer scrutinized Merla's reliability during cross-examination, insinuating that Merla's allegations against Portillo stemmed from personal grievances after being expelled from the Bandidos.
They cut me loose because I committed a murder, okay? There was no bylaws in the Bandidos saying, if you ever commit a murder, we're gonna kick you out. I'm an outlaw, man, ain't I?
Until it wasn't to their advantage to keep him. And then they put him out. They took his badge. He's no longer a Bandito. I don't think he'll walk from prison. And I think the only way he'll leave prison is in a box.
Portillo further questioned the accuracy of Merla's recollection, pointing out discrepancies between his courtroom testimony and his confession made while in prison. However, upon the government questioning Merla again, the court permitted the introduction of his confession as a prior consistent statement. In 2005, Anthony Benesh and his friend Carl Michael Burford made plans to establish the first Hells Angels chapter in Texas, where the club had no previous presence. Benesh boldly displayed his allegiance by getting a Hells Angels tattoo, painting his motorcycle in the club's signature red and white colors, and wearing a vest and jacket with the Hells Angels emblem. He even wore a patch designating him as the vice president of the Hells Angels. Burford claimed that he traveled to Arizona to get the approval to start a Texas chapter from Sonny Barger, the national president of the Hells Angels. However, Barger denied this and stated that he did not have the authority to grant such approval. The actions of Benesh and Burford angered the Bandidos Motorcycle Club.
He didn't want to throw a patch on and come to us to say we're going to do this because, that's dictating us, and we didn't do that. We weren't dictated to, we were doing dictating.
Burford attempted to avoid confrontation by limiting his use of the Hells Angels vest, whereas Benesh openly wore his Hells Angels patch around Austin. Benesh began receiving threatening calls regarding his association with the club, prompting concerns for his safety. Johnny Romo, a Bandidos member, was informed about Benesh by Portillo, who told him that 2 Hells Angels members were spotted in Austin. He explained that members of the local Austin chapter had tried everything to fix the problem, including threats, intimidation, and fear. Portillo and Johnny both held positions as sergeants at arms for the Bandidos national office at that time. Portillo conveyed to Johnny that Pike had instructed them to deal with Benesh and Burford. Johnny understood the directive as an order to kill, as the Bandidos sought to maintain their dominance in Texas by eliminating any rival one-percenters such as Benesh and Burford, because there, quote, shouldn't be no other one-percenters but the Bandidos in Texas, unquote. With Portillo's instruction, Johnny assembled a group of trusted Bandidos members, including his brother Robbie, who was not yet patched in and was aspiring to become a full-fledged member. The day prior to the incident, Johnny and the group he assembled made the journey from San Antonio to Austin in search of Benesh. They surveilled Benesh's residence until nightfall before returning to San Antonio. The following day, they returned to Austin, where Robbie was carrying a rifle. Upon locating Benesh, they trailed him and his family to a restaurant, parking outside. Spotting Benesh exiting the restaurant an hour later, Johnny alerted Robbie. Robbie positioned the rifle outside the passenger side window, took aim at Benesh's truck driver's side, and fatally shot Benesh in the back of the head. When the authorities arrived, Benesh had already passed away. Faircloth, Benesh's girlfriend, told the officers that she had warned Benesh against establishing a Hells Angels chapter in the area. After the murder, Johnny and the group swiftly departed the scene and promptly called Portillo from a public phone to inform him that, quote, "It's done." A few months later, when Johnny saw Pike, Pike expressed his pride by giving him a hug and a kiss and told him that he was very proud of him. Following the murder, Robbie, who was a prospect at the time of the attack, was granted early admission into the group. Johnny was given permission to establish an underground chapter of the Bandidos known as the Fat Mexican Crew, reporting directly to Pike. In addition, Johnny and his group were awarded Expect No Mercy patches. Following his arrest on federal narcotics charges in 2014, Johnny Romo began cooperating with federal authorities. However, it was later discovered by the government that Johnny and his brother Robbie were involved in the murder of Anthony Benesh. Subsequently, Johnny was arrested on murder charges in March 2017. Johnny admitted to his participation in the murder and pointed to his brother as the shooter during a detailed confession. A recorded conversation between Johnny and Robbie revealed Johnny encouraging Robbie to cooperate with the authorities, leading Robbie to confess to being the shooter. Both Romo brothers testified at the trial, implicating Pike and Portillo in Benesh's murder during their direct examination. The Cossacks, a motorcycle club based in North Texas, were granted permission by Pike in 2014 to include a Texas bottom rocker symbol on their patch. Pike saw this as a natural progression for the club and hoped it would foster communication between the two groups. However, tensions rose when the Bandidos felt the Cossacks were displaying the symbol disrespectfully. This led to escalating confrontations between the two clubs. At one point, Portillo told Johnny, quote, "We're not going to fuck around with them Cossacks, dude. It's on," unquote. Justin Forster, a former Bandidos member, testified that he heard Portillo tell Pike that the group had to, quote, "do what we got to do to deal with the Cossacks." Pike responded, quote, "Whatever y'all do, just be careful," unquote. The following are some of the violent incidents that occurred between the Cossacks and the Bandidos. In December 2014 in Fort Worth, the Bandidos attacked Cossacks members at a bar using firearms, clubs, and flashlights. During the altercation, they escorted an individual outside and fatally shot him. In a recorded conversation between Romo and Portillo following the event, Portillo stated that the Bandidos considered themselves to be in a war with their rivals. In March 2015 in Palo Pinto County, Arthur David Young, a Cossacks member, was targeted by a group of Bandidos in a black vehicle while at a gas station. When he refused to remove his vest, they struck him repeatedly in the head with a hammer. In August 2015 in Port Aransas, a group of Bandidos attacked numerous Cossacks members and their wives with beer bottles, knives, and other weapons. After the incident, Portillo was recorded saying that Pike, quote, "knows a little bit about it," unquote. Count 1 charged Pike of participating in a RICO conspiracy. To establish guilt under the RICO Act, the prosecution must demonstrate two elements. Firstly, that multiple individuals agreed to commit a substantive RICO offense, and secondly, that the defendant was aware of and endorsed the overarching objective of the RICO offense. In relation to the first requirement, the trial presented sufficient evidence indicating that Pike and fellow Bandidos members conspired to partake in a series of organized criminal activities. The RICO Act categorizes racketeering activity to encompass various offenses such as murder, robbery, extortion, and drug trafficking. A pattern of racketeering activity necessitates at least 2 such acts, and it was evident from the trial evidence that Pike allied with others in the Bandidos to support these illegal activities. This evidence includes testimony from Johnny implicating Pike in ordering Benesh's murder, and Justin Forster attesting to Pike's awareness of and support for the Bandidos' rivalry with the Cossacks. Additionally, extensive evidence from the trial revealed that other Bandidos members met to strategize and discuss carrying out criminal acts on behalf of the club. Even if Pike did not personally partake in these gatherings, his liability can still be established if there is proof that he knowingly and intentionally participated in the conspiracy. Records also establish that Pike ordered a, quote, ass-kicking for Hell's Angels members in Connecticut, who were engaging in altercations with the Bandidos. Moreover, Pike's position as president positioned him as a central figure within the Bandidos hierarchy, providing compelling evidence of his oversight over crucial decisions and actions taken by the group. Count 2 charged Portillo of the murder in aid of racketeering for the murder of Robert Lara. Count 3 charged both Portillo and Pike of the murder in aid of racketeering for the murder of Anthony Benesh. In regard to Pike, Count 3 accused him of aiding and abetting in Anthony Benesh's murder to support a racketeering enterprise, a violation under the Violent Crimes in Aid of Racketeering. To establish guilt under this law, the prosecution must prove 4 key elements. Firstly, the existence of an enterprise engaged in racketeering. Secondly, activities impacting interstate commerce. Thirdly, a murder. Lastly, the murder being carried out for payment by the enterprise, or to gain entry to, maintain, or elevate one's position within the enterprise. Merely associating with criminals or being present during a crime is insufficient on its own to warrant a conviction for aiding and abetting in criminal activities. Liability for aiding and abetting arises only if an individual takes proactive steps to advance the offense, and does so with the intent of aiding the offense's commission. The trial presented compelling evidence for the jury to conclude Pike's culpability in Count 3. Johnny Romo's testimony indicated that Portillo informed him of Benesh and Burford's presence in Austin and received a direct order from Pike to, quote, take them out, unquote. Johnny interpreted this directive as a command to, quote, kill him, commit murder, get rid of him, unquote. While Pike suggests the term take out could have had alternate meanings beyond murder, it was within the jury's purview to interpret the phrase and determine that Pike instructed the brothers to kill Benesh. Additionally, Robbie Romo corroborated his brother's account by testifying that Pike was the individual who, quote, wanted this Hell's Angel killed, unquote. The prosecution also presented substantial circumstantial evidence regarding Pike's role within the organization and the duties associated with being the Bandidos president. Recordings captured Portillo stating that no major decisions were made without Pike's knowledge. In another instance, Portillo mentioned that going against Jeff's wishes would mean, quote, the end of me, unquote. Justin Forster testified that any significant decision-making falls on the president, highlighting the president's authority. Moreover, trial evidence illustrated Pike's approval of Benesh's murder post-event, evidenced by the establishment of the Fat Mexican Crew with Pike's explicit consent. Taken together, this evidence provided a solid basis for a reasonable fact finder to conclude Pike's guilt beyond a doubt. Both Portillo and Pike were charged with the following. Count 4. Conspiracy to commit murder in aid of racketeering. Count 5. Conspiracy to commit assault with a dangerous weapon in aid of racketeering. Count 6. Assault with a dangerous weapon in aid of racketeering in Palo Pinto County, Texas. Count 7. Assault with a dangerous weapon in aid of racketeering in Port Aransas, Texas. In relation to Pike, Counts 4 through 7 accused him of violent crimes in aid of racketeering offenses connected to the Bandidos' rivalry with the Cossacks. Pike was convicted of conspiring to commit murder and assault with a deadly weapon against Cossacks members to aid racketeering, assisting in the Bandidos' attack on a Cossack in Palo Pinto County, and aiding in the assault on another Cossack in Port Aransas in August 2015. During the trial, evidence was presented to show that Pike was aware of the disputes between the Bandidos and the Cossacks, and supported the group's use of violence to address the issues. Despite not agreeing to every part of the criminal acts, Pike's endorsement of the group's violent plans formed a conspiracy. Reports indicated that Pike encouraged aggressive actions against the Cossacks and approved of future retaliatory actions by the Bandidos. The government also provided evidence of assaults and murders targeting Cossack members across Texas, including the fatal altercation in Fort Worth and violent incidents in Port Aransas and Palo Pinto County. This evidence supported Pike's conviction, even if he did not agree to specific acts within the conspiracy. The trial evidence suggested that Pike played a significant role in making key decisions for the group, showing his involvement in the conspiracy. During a discussion with Portillo, Pike responded with caution when Portillo mentioned wanting to, quote, turn up the heat on the Cossacks, reportedly saying, quote, whatever y'all do, y'all be careful, unquote. In the same conversation, Pike agreed to, quote, turn his back on any future retaliatory actions by the Bandidos. In another conversation, Portillo recounted how Pike instructed him to, quote, play ball and batter up motherfucker, while discussing plans to address the Cossack situation in Crystal City. Count 8 charged Portillo of the using and discharging a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence in the murder of Robert Lara. Count 9 charged both Portillo and Pike of using and discharging a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence for the murder of Anthony Benesh. In relation to Pike, the jury was informed that he could be found guilty under the Pinkerton theory of liability, which allows defendants in criminal conspiracy cases to be found guilty of crimes committed by their co-conspirators. Given the evidence presented, the jury could find Pike guilty of a RICO conspiracy. The evidence suggested that Benesh was killed as a form of punishment for going against the club or its members, which aligns with the conspiracy. Therefore, there was enough evidence to support Pike's conviction on Count 9. Count 10 charged Portillo with conspiracy to distribute and possession with intent to distribute 500 grams or more of methamphetamine and cocaine. Count 11 charged Portillo with possession with intent to distribute cocaine. Count 12 charged both Portillo and Pike with conspiracy to interfere with commerce by threats or violence. In relation to Pike, Charge 12 accused him of conspiring to disrupt interstate commerce through extortion or robbery, in violation of the Hobbs Act. To prove liability under this law, the government only needed to show that interstate commerce was affected in any way. During the trial, the government presented evidence indicating that Pike approved a plan for Bandidos to travel from Texas to New Mexico to forcibly take patches from members challenging his authority. Witness Justin Forster stated that Pike instructed him to resolve the issue caused by these members. Forster and a group of Bandidos members then traveled to New Mexico and used violence against those who did not acknowledge Pike as their president. Forster confirmed that they forcefully took 16 patches from defiant New Mexico Bandidos members, destroying most of them along with other related items, despite the patches belonging to the Bandidos rather than individual disobedient members. This evidence supported Pike's conviction. This is due to the fact that extortion can occur, even when obtaining one's own property, and a defendant's belief of ownership rights is irrelevant in an extortion case. Count 13 charged Portillo with felon in possession of a firearm. On May 17, 2018, the jury rendered a verdict of guilty on all charges against Portillo and Pike. In the same year, Portillo received a sentence of 2 life terms, along with 2 consecutive 10-year terms for counts 8 and 9. Pike, on the other hand, was sentenced to 1 life term, along with an additional consecutive 10-year term for count 9.